Her ex invited her to his wedding to humiliate her, so she showed up with a homeless man. Everyone laughed, until he adjusted his cufflinks, walked to the groom, and said one sentence that froze the entire hall. Because the homeless man wasn't there for love, he was there for revenge. Comment where you're watching from and sit back, grab your popcorn and watch the story unfold. Davina Adebayo, an arrogant billionaire heiress, held a wedding invitation in her manicured hands. It was from her ex-fiancé, the man who had left her for someone else without hesitation. And now, he had sent an invitation, as if he wanted to rub his happiness in her face. "Is this a joke?" she muttered, tossing the envelope onto the mahogany desk. Her friend, Michelle Okafor, picked up the invitation and whistled. "That's a low blow. Are you going?" Davina let out a dry laugh. "And show up alone like a spinster? No way." "Then take someone. Show him you've moved on." It was a good idea, but taking just anyone wouldn't be enough. She needed to make an impact to leave Samuel wondering what she was up to. Later that day, as she left her office in Victoria Island, she was still thinking about it when she noticed a young man sitting on the sidewalk in front of a restaurant. He was dirty, his clothes worn out, but he had a striking, handsome face. His messy hair fell over his forehead, and his eyes weren't pleading. They were defiant. On impulse, she walked over to him. She approached, hands in her blazer pockets, looking down at him. "Hey, you need money?" The man looked up, but not with gratitude. His gaze was sharp, as if he were deciding whether she was even worth a second of his attention. Then a smirk appeared on his lips. "What is this? A social experiment?" he asked, his voice deep. "And depending on my answer, you either toss me a coin or walk away?" Davina's eyebrows lifted. No one talked to her like that. "Come with me to an event, and I'll pay you enough to change your life." He let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head slowly. "Enough to change my life? Wow. Do you always use dramatic lines, or just when you want to sound like some kind of savior?" There was pure sarcasm in his voice, and it threw her off more than it should have. She kept her composure. "You just need to clean up, wear a suit, smile, and come with me." He tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Oh, I see. You want me to be your arm candy for the night?" Davina narrowed her eyes. This man was challenging her on purpose. "If you don't want the offer, I can find someone else." He laughed, this time out loud. "Is this a joke? Because honestly, I don't see a line of candidates waiting around here." She pressed her lips together. How the hell was he turning this around on her? He stood up, dusted off his trousers and stepped closer, too close, towering over her. "I'll accept," he said, as if he were doing her a favor, "but only because I'm curious." Davina felt something dangerous in the air. "Curious? Curious about what?" she asked, suspicious. He smiled, his eyes glowing with an unreadable expression. "To see how far a woman like you is willing to go." Davina stood still for a moment. Who the hell was this man? Gabriel settled into the seat of the luxury car, keeping his gaze fixed on the Lagos city lights passing by outside the window. He didn't seem scared, nervous, or impressed, just observant. Davina, sitting beside him, realized she was waiting for some kind of reaction from him. No questions, no hesitation, just acceptance. "You don't even want to know where we're going?" she asked, breaking the silence. He turned to her, a smirk playing on his lips. "Someplace expensive, I imagine." Davina raised an eyebrow. "And you're not curious?" "Should I be?" He tilted his head. "You found me on the street and offered me money to be your date. That's already strange enough, but I doubt you're planning to sell me into human trafficking or something." Davina laughed. "No, nothing that dramatic. Just a social event, a wedding." "Right." He looked at her. "How do you know?" "You have that look. A woman trying to get revenge on someone." Davina clenched her jaw. Gabriel was reading her like an open book, and she didn't like it. "And if I am?" He shrugged, leaning back. "Does it matter to me? As long as I get paid." Davina smiled. She liked his attitude, but she still wanted to understand who this man was, someone who accepted everything so easily. Minutes later, the car stopped in front of an elegant building, a renowned men's boutique and grooming lounge. Gabriel stepped out without question and followed Davina inside. The place smelled of expensive cologne and leather, and a team of stylists rushed to assist them the moment she entered. "I want a complete transformation," Davina ordered. "Shave, haircut, tailored suit, everything." The staff nodded, and within seconds Gabriel was seated in a barber's chair. "If you want to change your mind, now's the time," he said, as a barber began trimming his beard. "Change my mind about me? I guess I was expecting someone more impressionable." Davina crossed her arms. "Are you not impressed by anything?" "Not by this." Gabriel closed his eyes as the barber tilted the chair back. "I've been in this world before." Davina frowned, but before she could ask anything, the stylist pulled her toward the waiting area. "Miss Adebayo, would you let us work?" She glanced at Gabriel one last time and left, intrigued. The hours dragged on. When the stylist finally called her name, Davina stood up and walked back to the grooming area. When she saw him, she held her breath. The man standing before her didn't look like the same person she had met sitting on the curb. His messy hair was now neatly trimmed and styled. His face, previously hidden by grit and an unkempt beard, was clean-shaven and handsome, revealing a strong jawline. The fitted tuxedo flattered his broad shoulders and tall frame, making him look powerful and confident. But what surprised her the most was his expression. He didn't seem shocked or impressed by his transformation. He simply adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror, observing as if he had seen himself like this before. "What is it?" He turned to her, catching her curious gaze. "You don't look surprised." Gabriel smiled, a mysterious glint in his eyes. "Because I'm not." Davina crossed her arms. "Who are you, Gabriel?" He grabbed the phone the stylist handed him, a temporary one she had provided, and walked toward her. "Someone who knows how to seize good opportunities when they come." The car glided smoothly down the illuminated road toward the event Davina had been avoiding but was now eager to attend. Beside her, Gabriel observed the landscape with an almost irritating calm. She had expected him to show some anxiety or nervousness at some point, but since leaving the salon, his composure remained flawless, as if he were already familiar with that world. "You're very quiet," Davina commented, glancing away from the road to look at him. "I'm just enjoying the silence," Gabriel replied with a faint smile. She frowned. "Most people in your situation would be dazzled by all this." He laughed softly. "Maybe I'm not like most people." Davina realized that pressing him further wouldn't get her anywhere. There was something about him that intrigued her, but she wouldn't get answers so easily. The car finally stopped in front of the luxurious banquet hall, where hundreds of elite guests in vibrant aso-ebi and designer suits had already gathered. Outside, couples stepped out of limousines and sports cars, showing off their jewelry and elaborate gowns. Photographers and journalists covered the event, ensuring every detail of the wedding was documented for the Society blogs and Ovation magazine. Davina got out first, adjusting her gown naturally. Then Gabriel stepped out and extended his arm to her, which she accepted without hesitation. When he stepped out of the car, the immediate impact was undeniable. All eyes turned to him. Women whispered among themselves, trying to figure out who the mysterious, handsome man accompanying Davina Adebayo was. Men watched him with calculating interest. Gabriel, however, didn't flinch. With impeccable poise, he lifted his chin and smiled discreetly, as if he were already used to being the center of attention. Davina guided him down the red carpet toward the entrance of the hall. As they walked, Gabriel maintained a serene expression, showing no surprise at the luxurious surroundings. "Follow my lead," Davina whispered. "Be polite, smile, and don't draw unnecessary attention." He raised an eyebrow. "Did you bring me here to make your ex jealous, or to be invisible?" Davina pressed her lips together, not answering. "That's what I thought," Gabriel said with amusement. They passed through the double doors and entered the grand hall, where crystal chandeliers sparkled under golden light. The room was filled with high society figures dressed in their finest traditional and Western attire. It didn't take long for Samuel and his bride to come into Davina's line of sight. Samuel looked dashing in an elegant white agbada, his smile perfectly crafted to charm everyone. Jane Danjuma, his new wife, was exactly the type his family would approve of: wealthy, traditional, and predictable. Samuel's eyes met Davina's for a brief second. He seemed surprised to see her there, but then his gaze landed on Gabriel and froze. Samuel's expression changed subtly, as if trying to figure out who this dashing man next to his ex-fiancée was. With a calculated smile, Davina led Gabriel directly toward them. "Samuel?" she greeted him with a polite yet cold tone. He blinked a few times before forcing a smile. "Davina, what a surprise. I didn't expect you to come." "Of course I came." She looked at Gabriel. "And I brought company." Samuel examined Gabriel from head to toe, clearly intimidated by his height and presence. "We haven't been introduced. You are?" Before Davina could respond, Gabriel extended his hand naturally. "Gabriel, a pleasure to meet you." His voice was firm, deep. His posture was flawless, and his handshake showed no sign of submission. Samuel hesitated before shaking his hand, clearly uncomfortable. "You look familiar," Samuel remarked. Gabriel smiled, tilting his head slightly. "Do I?" Samuel forced another smile, but Davina noticed the tension in his eyes. He was unsettled, exactly as she wanted. Jane cleared her throat, trying to break the awkward atmosphere. "Shall we toast?" She raised her champagne glass. Davina nodded, but before she could turn, Gabriel gave a polite smile and said something that caught everyone off guard. "I hope you'll be very happy. Marriage is a serious commitment. I was once engaged myself." Davina froze. Samuel and Jane exchanged glances. "Really?" Samuel asked, forcing a casual tone. Gabriel nodded, taking a sip of champagne. "But it didn't work out. My fiancé decided I wasn't the right choice for her family." Davina felt a chill run through her. He was sending a clear message and Samuel caught it. Her ex-fiancé's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's an interesting coincidence," Samuel said. Gabriel smiled. "I think so too." An uncomfortable silence filled the air. Davina could tell Samuel was struggling to keep his composure. Finally, Gabriel lightly touched Davina's waist. "Would you like to dance?" She blinked, surprised. "Dance?" "Yes. Or would you rather stay here and watch your ex-fiancé try to figure out where he knows me from?" Davina chuckled softly. She liked the game Gabriel was playing. "Let's dance." They walked away, leaving Samuel behind, visibly disturbed. As they glided across the dance floor to the live band's melody, Davina looked straight into Gabriel's eyes. "You did that on purpose," he smiled. "Didn't I tell you I've been in this world before?" Davina felt a mix of irritation and admiration. Gabriel wasn't just a homeless man she had found on the street. He knew exactly what he was doing. The music flowed smoothly through the ballroom as Davina and Gabriel moved across the dance floor. Her gaze remained locked on his, trying to figure him out. Gabriel maintained flawless composure. His lips curved into a mysterious smile as if he knew exactly what he was doing. "You keep surprising me," Davina murmured, letting him lead her with precision. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Gabriel arched an eyebrow. "I haven't decided yet." He laughed softly, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "I think you've already realized that I'm not exactly what I seem. I've realized that you know much more about this world than you should." Gabriel tilted his head slightly. "Let's just say I've been surrounded by people like this before." Before Davina could ask more, a group of businessmen approached, holding champagne glasses and offering friendly smiles. They were investors and magnates Davina knew well. "Miss Adebayo," one of them said, nodding respectfully, "you finally decided to show up at a social event." Davina returned a polite smile. "I thought it would be interesting to celebrate the couple." The businessman's attention quickly shifted to Gabriel, studying him with interest. "And who is your handsome companion?" Before Davina could respond, Gabriel stepped forward and extended his hand naturally. "Gabriel, a pleasure to meet you." He spoke with such natural confidence that none of the businessmen questioned his presence. "Gabriel, one of them repeated, studying him. Your face looks familiar. Gabriel smiled, keeping the mystery alive. Perhaps we've met at a board meeting before. The businessman nodded thoughtfully but didn't press further. Davina watched him closely. Gabriel was blending in far too easily. And what do you do, Gabriel? Another businessman asked, intrigued. He picked up a champagne glass from a passing waiter, swirling the liquid before answering. I enjoy observing the financial market. The rise in fintech investments in Lagos has been quite interesting lately, especially the new startups focused on digital payments. There was a brief silence. Davina almost laughed at the surprised expressions on the businessmen's faces. None of them had expected such an articulate response. That's a rather specific topic, one of the men commented. Gabriel smiled, taking a sip of his drink. I just follow trends. After all, everything comes down to who gets the inside information first, doesn't it? The men laughed, now more at ease. Gabriel had captured their interest. Davina, however, felt a growing frustration. Gabriel wasn't just fitting in, he was taking over. Before she could intervene, a tall woman with a distinguished appearance approached. Daniela Blackwood is one of the country's most influential investors, known for her sharp business instincts and her ability to size people up quickly. Gabriel, right? Daniela looked at him with interest. You seem very comfortable here. He turned to her with a polite smile. Maybe because I am. Daniela laughed. I like that. And what's your relationship with Adebayo? He shot Davina a playful look before answering. Just an interesting partnership. Davina felt her blood boil. Gabriel was playing his own game and she didn't like losing control. Indeed, Davina interjected, taking the glass from his hand and handing it to a waiter. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to steal my companion for a moment. She grabbed his wrist and led him to a more secluded area of the ballroom. What exactly are you doing? She asked through clenched teeth. Gabriel smiled. Just having fun. You're standing out too much. Wasn't that the plan? To make your ex-fiancé jealous? Davina narrowed her eyes. You play very well, Gabriel. He tilted his head. And you don't like it when you can't control the game, do you? Davina let out a short laugh. You're not just a simple beggar. Gabriel crossed his arms. And it took you a while to figure that out. Before she could respond, Samuel appeared beside them. I hope you're enjoying the party, he said politely, though his eyes assessed Gabriel cautiously. Very much, Gabriel answered before Davina could speak. Samuel forced a calculated smile. You know, Gabriel, I feel like we've met before. Maybe, Gabriel replied with a shrug. The Lagos high society world can be small after all. Davina noticed the way Samuel pressed his lips together. And where do you know Davina from? Samuel insisted. Gabriel smiled. I think it's more fun if that stays a mystery. Samuel let out a soft laugh, though there was something sharp in his gaze. Of course. Mystery always adds an interesting touch to stories. He turned to Davina. Can we talk for a moment? Davina nodded, but before stepping away, she cast one last look at Gabriel. He simply smiled, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Davina followed Samuel to a private balcony. The night was humid, and the city lights sparkled in the distance, but the look on the man in front of her burned like fire. Who is he, Davina? Samuel asked bluntly, crossing his arms over his immaculate agbada. She kept her expression neutral. Gabriel, my companion. He let out a dry laugh. Don't treat me like a fool. I know the kind of men you bring to events like this, and he doesn't fit the mold. Davina felt a surge of irritation. What exactly do you want to know, Samuel? He stared at her intensely. Where did he come from? She hesitated for a second, and that was enough for Samuel to catch on. My God, he whispered, as if he had pieced the puzzle together. You found this man on the street, didn't you? Davina didn't confirm it, but her silence said it all. This is unbelievable, Samuel said with a disbelieving laugh. You brought a beggar to provoke me. I brought a confident, intelligent man who fits in here perfectly, she countered firmly. A man who knows too much for someone who is supposedly living on the street, Samuel retorted, narrowing his eyes. He doesn't belong in this world, or does he? Davina didn't like his tone. Don't try to play games with me, Samuel. You don't have that right anymore. He raised an eyebrow. Maybe I don't, but I have the right to know who I'm dealing with. Samuel straightened his posture as if he had already made a decision. If I were you, Davina, I'd be careful. That man didn't show up in your life by chance. Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked back to the ballroom, leaving Davina alone with her doubts. Gabriel felt the stares as he moved through the guests. It was inevitable since his arrival. Everyone had been trying to figure out who he was. But he moved with ease, as if he had always belonged there. Then, Samuel appeared in front of him. You dance well. Gabriel smiled. Thank you. So do you. Samuel tilted his head, studying him. And you speak well. You know how to carry yourself at an event like this. I appreciate the compliment, Gabriel said calmly. It wasn't a compliment, it was an observation. Samuel noticed the tension in Gabriel's eyes. You think you know me? Gabriel laughed softly. I don't think I know. Gabriel kept his posture steady. Then tell me, Samuel, who do you think I am? Samuel observed him for a long moment before smiling. That's what I'm still trying to figure out. He picked up a glass of champagne from a waiter's tray. But don't worry, Gabriel. I always find out. He took a sip and disappeared into the crowd. Gabriel stood still, taking a deep breath. Samuel was starting to suspect something, and that was a problem. In the car, Davina drove in silence. Gabriel watched the bright city streets, but he could tell she was unsettled. You want to ask me something, he said. I do. She didn't take her eyes off the road. But I don't know if you'll answer. He smiled. Depends on the question. Davina turned the wheel, making a sharp turn. Who are you, Gabriel? He crossed his legs, relaxed. The man you chose to make an impression on your ex-fiancé. No. Her jaw tightened. You know too much. You act like someone who has lived in this world before. He stayed quiet. Davina pulled up in front of the hotel she had booked for him and turned to face him. I had you investigated. He didn't look surprised. And what did you find? She studied him. Nothing. You don't exist, Gabriel. No records, no recent information. It's as if you erased your own life. He gave a small smile. Maybe some things need to be erased. Davina felt a mix of frustration and fascination. I don't like mysteries. Then maybe I'm not the right person for you. He opened the car door and stepped out, walking into the hotel without looking back. Davina sat still for a moment, her fingers gripping the steering wheel. He was hiding something, and she was going to find out. Gabriel locked the door and leaned against it. His heart was racing. Samuel was suspicious. Davina was suspicious. He looked at himself in the mirror. The luxurious tuxedo, the clean shave. For a moment, he looked like someone else. Or maybe he was becoming who he had always been. He pulled out the disposable phone hidden in his inner pocket and typed a short message. She started investigating. The reply came seconds later. Then it's time for you to decide your next move. Gabriel deleted the message and let out a quiet sigh. He knew he couldn't keep this secret for long, and soon Davina would find out the truth. Davina was not a patient woman. She liked direct answers, absolute control over everything around her. But Gabriel, he was a mystery that defied her logic, and that bothered her more than she wanted to admit. That morning, as she sipped her coffee in her office, her mind was still stuck on the night before. Gabriel knew things he shouldn't know. He acted like he belonged in high society, yet he had no records. He didn't exist in any system. It was as if he had erased his own history. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in a while. I need you to look into someone for me, she said bluntly as soon as the call was answered. On the other end, a man chuckled. It's been a while, Adebayo. Who's the target? Gabriel. Davina paused for a moment. No last name. That makes things more interesting. I want to know everything. Where he came from, who he really is, and why he seems to be hiding something. Give me 48 hours. Davina hung up and leaned back in her chair. If Gabriel was playing a game with her, she would soon see his cards. Hours later, after leaving the office, she decided to find him. She knew he was still staying at the hotel she had booked for him. When she arrived, she went straight to his floor and knocked on the door without warning. Let's play a little game with those who only read the comments. Type chocolate in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. It took a few seconds, but Gabriel finally opened the door. He was dressed simply in jeans and a t-shirt, without the tuxedo from the night before, yet his posture remained unwavering. Were you expecting someone? Davina asked, crossing her arms. He didn't seem surprised by her visit. Not really, but you don't seem like the type who announces her arrival, do you? She studied him for a moment. Can we talk? He stepped aside, letting her in. Davina walked into the room, scanning the neatly arranged space. There was no sign that Gabriel had been living on the streets. Have you always been this straightforward? He asked. She smirked. You don't like small talk, so why should I use it? Davina sat on the couch across from him. I want to know the truth, Gabriel. He raised an eyebrow. The truth about what? About you. Who are you really? He leaned forward slightly. Why does that bother you so much? Her fists tightened. Because you came out of nowhere, accepted my offer without hesitation, and act like you already belong in this world. But there are no records of you anywhere. He was silent for a moment. And what if I don't want to tell you? Davina let out a humorless laugh. So I'll find out on my own. He looked at her for a long moment before sighing. Fine, Davina, I'll tell you a little. She adjusted herself on the sofa, waiting. I grew up in a world very similar to yours. Luxury, parties, powerful connections. But that world can be cruel, especially when you become an obstacle to the wrong people. Davina narrowed her eyes. Obstacle. My family was influential. My father ran businesses that involved a lot of money, but one betrayal made everything fall apart overnight. I lost everything. She frowned. Who betrayed you? Gabriel looked away. Someone I trusted. Davina sensed there was more to the story than he was revealing. Why did you erase your life? He gave a sad smile. Because sometimes it's safer to disappear. The silence between them grew heavy. Davina knew he wasn't telling her everything, but this was the first piece of the puzzle. And now? What do you plan to do? Gabriel crossed his legs. I'm still deciding. Davina stood up. You can keep deceiving me, Gabriel, but I will find out the truth. He watched her leave the room without saying another word. The next day, Davina received a call from her investigator. I found something. Tell me you were right. Gabriel isn't who he pretends to be. Davina gripped the phone tightly. Go on. His real name is Gabriel Balogun, son of Peter Balogun. Davina's blood ran cold. She knew that name. The construction tycoon. That's the one. But here's the interesting part. Peter Balogun went bankrupt a few years ago after a scandal involving embezzlement. And guess who was involved in that scandal? Davina felt her breath quicken. Samuel Nwosu. Exactly. Davina fell silent for a moment. So Gabriel didn't show up by chance. Seems like he didn't. She hung up and stared out the window of her office at the city below. Gabriel had a direct connection to Samuel. That changed everything. Later that evening, she was in her office reviewing some documents, but she couldn't focus on a single word. Gabriel's image kept flashing in her mind. The sparks of anger and vulnerability in his eyes, the way he never backed down. Before she realized it, she grabbed her car keys and drove to the hotel where he was staying. She needed to see him. She needed to hear the truth from his own mouth. The door opened after a few seconds, revealing Gabriel with a tired expression. His hair was slightly messy. Davina? His voice carried surprise. "We need to talk." He sighed and opened the door wider, letting her in. "I didn't know you made late-night visits." "Neither did I." She crossed her arms, staring at him. "Can you stop testing me for a minute and tell me the truth?" "About what?" She frowned. "About why you accepted my proposal without hesitation." He looked away for a moment before finally speaking. "Because Samuel Nosu destroyed my family." Those words made Davina's stomach churn. She already knew, but she wanted confirmation. "Samuel was responsible for my father's downfall, for the destruction of my life." She observed him closely. "Tell me everything." Gabriel walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "My father, Peter Balogan, owned one of the largest construction companies in the country. He was an honorable, respected man until he trusted the Nuosus. Samuel came into the business as a strategic partner, someone he believed he could rely on. But in reality, he was manipulating him the whole time. Manipulating how? Creating fraudulent deals, embezzling money, putting his name on illegal transactions without his knowledge. When everything exploded, my father was accused of corruption. He lost everything, our home, our dignity." His voice wavered. "He passed away before he could defend himself." Davina felt a pang in her chest as she heard that. "My God." Gabriel continued, his eyes fixed on the city outside. "After that, everything fell apart. My mother got sick shortly after and couldn't hold on. I tried to fight to prove his innocence, but Samuel had already closed all the doors on me. In no time, I had nothing left." Davina stood and walked over to him. "You survived on the streets?" "Yes. And that's how I learned never to trust anyone again." She reached out and lifted his chin, forcing him to look at her. "You don't have to do this alone." He pulled his face away. "I don't need a savior, Davina." She took a deep breath, fighting the urge to insist. "I know, but that doesn't mean you have to carry everything by yourself." Gabriel let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You think you can protect me?" "I think I want to protect you." He blinked, surprised. "And why?" She let out a sigh. "Because I don't know what I'm feeling anymore when I'm around you." There was a long silence. Gabriel finally turned fully to face her. "What does that mean?" She ran a hand through her hair. "It means you make me uneasy. I've never felt this way before. I can't explain it." He watched her for a long moment. "And does that bother you a lot?" "Then maybe it's best if we keep our distance." She shook her head. "I can't do that." He looked away, clearly disturbed by the direction of the conversation. "This doesn't change anything, I know." He clenched his fists. "And what about Samuel?" The mere mention of her ex-fiancé's name was enough to bring her back to reality. "If everything you said is true, I don't know who he really is." Gabriel nodded slowly. "But I do. And I won't stop until I settle the score." Davina remained silent. She knew she wouldn't be able to convince him to back down. "Then I'll be by your side." He gave a small, bittersweet smile. Even knowing this could end very badly. She took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Even then. Later that night, Davina was awakened by the sound of her phone ringing. "Davina, we have a problem," said the investigator on the other end. "What is it?" "Samuel already knows Gabriel's around, and he's not happy about it." Davina's heart raced. "What is he going to do?" "We don't know yet, but he is digging for information on Gabriel." She clenched her jaw. "Keep me posted on any updates." When she hung up, a weight settled on her chest. Samuel wouldn't leave Gabriel alone. She needed to act before it was too late. The next morning, Davina found Gabriel on the hotel balcony. He was sitting on the ground, arms wrapped around his knees, staring at the horizon. She approached slowly and crouched down beside him. "You know he's found out, right?" "I know," he sighed. "He's not going to stop. Neither will I." Davina watched him for a moment. The way his hair was slightly disheveled, how tired his eyes looked. Something inside her tightened. "Gabriel." He blinked a few times as if trying to hold back emotions, but looked at her with intensity. It was instinctive. Davina pulled him into an embrace, holding him close against her chest. "It's going to be okay," she murmured. He didn't resist. He simply closed his eyes and rested his head against her shoulder. Neither of them said anything. There was no need. In that moment, without having to admit it aloud, they knew they were in this together, and that Samuel had no idea what was coming. Davina felt that something was about to happen. Since her conversation with Gabriel the previous night, her mind hadn't found any rest. Knowing that Samuel was involved in ruining Gabriel's family changed everything. She wanted revenge, not just for Gabriel but for herself. After all, she had almost married a man capable of destroying lives without hesitation. Now she needed to find out how far Samuel would go to protect his secrets. That morning, while reviewing some reports in her office, she received a call from her private investigator. "Davina, we have a problem." "Go on." "Samuel is up to something. My contacts say he's gathering information on Gabriel. It looks like he's planning to expose something against him." Davina gritted her teeth. "What exactly did he find out?" "I don't know yet. But I do know he's already reached out to lawyers and journalists. If he's going that far, it means he has something big." She threw the pen on her desk and stood up, running a hand through her hair. "Find out what it is before he makes a move. I'm on it, but I suggest you warn Gabriel." She took a deep breath. "I'm on my way to see him now." When she arrived at the hotel where Gabriel was staying, Davina knocked hard on the door. He opened quickly, surprised to see her so tense. "What is it?" She walked in without waiting for an invitation and shut the door behind her. "Samuel is making a move against you." His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "He's gathering information and planning something big. My investigator believed he might try to expose you publicly." Gabriel didn't seem surprised. He just sighed and crossed his arms. "I knew this would happen. And you're this calm about it?" He laughed, without humor. "After everything I've been through? Davina, do you really think a scandal is going to scare me?" She watched him for a moment, admiring his strength, but that didn't lessen the danger. "I can protect you," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "I told you, I don't need a savior. This isn't about saving me, it's about stopping Samuel." Gabriel stepped closer, looking deep into her eyes. "And what are you going to do, Davina?" She held his face gently, her thumbs brushing his skin softly. "Whatever it takes." For a moment he just stood there looking at her. There was something in his eyes, something Davina wanted to understand, but that he quickly hid. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me." She gave a faint smile. "Too late for that." Before he could respond, Gabriel's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen, his face tensing. "What is it?" Davina asked. He showed her the screen. It was an anonymous message. "Be careful who you trust. The past always comes back to haunt you." She took the phone from him and studied the message. That was Samuel. Gabriel took the phone back and deleted the message. "He's trying to intimidate me." Davina shook her head. "That means we're getting close to something." He nodded slowly. "Then we need to act before he does." The next morning, a scandal broke. Every major newspaper and blog ran headlines about Gabriel's past. Gabriel Balogun, from luxury to the streets, the heir who lost everything, new toy boy of Davina Adebayo, involved in corruption scandals. The media was ruthless, reporting every detail about the Balogun family's downfall, painting Gabriel as a gigolo trying to deceive the powerful. Samuel had made the first move. At the office, Davina read every article, fury burning inside her. When Gabriel walked in, she stood up. "Did you see it?" He nodded and tossed a magazine onto the table. "Samuel is trying to destroy me again." She clenched her fists. "That's not going to happen." He gave a soft laugh. "You always have that absurd confidence." She gently held his chin, making him look at her. "Because I never lose." His eyes flickered with something close to hope, but determination quickly took over. "Then let's make sure he loses this time." Davina nodded. "It's time to bring Samuel Nwosu down." They stared at each other for a long moment. They didn't know how this would end. The scandal involving Gabriel had dominated the headlines for days. Samuel played dirty, distorting his past to make it seem like he was an opportunist trying to re-enter high society. But Gabriel remained unfazed. He had waited years for this moment. He wouldn't fall now. Davina knew that too, but she also knew Samuel wasn't done. He would try one final blow, and they had to be ready. That evening, Gabriel received an unexpected invitation. Private dinner at the Nwosu Club, select members only. Your presence is requested. He gripped the invitation tightly. Davina, sitting on the couch in his room, read the note and scoffed. This is obviously a trap. I know. She stood up. Then you're not going. Gabriel looked at her defiantly. Of course I'm going. Davina pressed her lips together. Gabriel. This is my moment, Davina. I'm not running. She took a deep breath, running a hand through her hair. Then let's make sure Samuel is the only one who loses tonight. The Nwosu mansion was lit up, filled with select guests for the event. Gabriel walked in alone, wearing an elegant black suit that exuded power and mystery. Davina was already there, blending in with the crowd, watching every detail. Then Samuel appeared. Gabriel, he said, a venomous smile on his lips. Glad you accepted my invitation. You didn't give me much choice, Gabriel replied, taking a glass of champagne from a waiter. Samuel tilted his head. I hope you've enjoyed the attention you've been getting lately. The media loved your story. I've gotten used to being the center of attention. Something you've always wanted, haven't you? Samuel's eyes flashed with anger for a second, but he quickly regained his composure. Gabriel boy, you've lost again. No matter what you try, you'll never be someone again. Gabriel smiled. You're wrong. Samuel narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Davina appeared at Gabriel's side, her imposing presence making Samuel stiffen. Dear Samuel, it looks like you didn't read the papers today, she said, handing him an envelope. Samuel opened it and turned pale as he read. It was a complete dossier proving his involvement in the scheme that had ruined the Balogun family. Documents, recordings, signatures, undeniable evidence. This is fake, Samuel whispered, his hands trembling. No, it's not, Gabriel said triumphantly. And tomorrow morning, it'll be on every front page. Samuel completely lost his composure. You can't do this to me. Davina smiled coldly. Just like you did, Gabriel. Samuel looked around, realizing that all eyes were on him. The scandal had already begun. His reputation was ruined. He was finished. This can't be happening, he murmured in shock. Gabriel leaned in and whispered in his ear. Now you know what it feels like to lose everything. Samuel glanced around, realizing that everyone was witnessing his humiliation. His empire of power was crumbling right before his eyes. Then, before he could react, the ballroom door swung open. 2 police officers walked in, followed by a prosecutor. Mr. Samuel Nwosu, one of the officers announced. He froze. Yes, you are under arrest for financial fraud, embezzlement, and market manipulation. The entire ballroom fell silent. Samuel let out a nervous laugh. This is ridiculous. I am Samuel Nwosu. And now you're also a criminal, Gabriel replied coldly. The officers stepped forward and handcuffed Samuel. Davina, he screamed, desperate. Say something. She simply looked at him with indifference. Your only mistake was thinking you'd never get caught. As he was dragged away, Samuel shot one last look at Gabriel, his eyes burning with hatred. This isn't over for you. It is. And just like that, in front of the elite who once admired him, Samuel was taken away. Gabriel let out a long breath. For the first time in years, he felt truly free. The next day, Samuel's arrest dominated the news. His financial empire collapsed within hours as investors and allies abandoned him. Later that evening, Gabriel and Davina were in her penthouse looking out over the city through the window. He held a glass of whiskey but didn't drink. He was deep in thought. You did it, Davina said. We did it. He smiled. And now? Gabriel sighed. I start over. Davina felt an unfamiliar tightness in her chest when she heard that. I want to help you. He looked at her, skeptical. How? She walked over to him, took an envelope, and handed it to him. This is a proposal for a new business. A company in your name. He blinked, surprised. What? I want to start something for you. A business of your own, with your name, your independence. He set his glass down and crossed his arms. Davina, I don't need your charity. She chuckled, shaking her head. This isn't charity, it's a partnership. You have talent, you have vision. I want you to have something that belongs to you. He hesitated. I don't know. She took his hands in hers. Gabriel, you've spent years fighting. It's time to start building something real. He remained silent for a long time. Then he sighed. All right, but on one condition. What condition? He stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. I do this my way. Davina smiled. You always do? The air between them changed. Something warm and intense lingered there. He looked away, but she gently cupped his face. Gabriel. He didn't resist when she pulled him into a kiss. This time there were no barriers between them. The tension, the unspoken feelings, everything erupted in that moment. Davina held him tightly as if afraid he might slip away. After the kiss, Gabriel pulled back, met her gaze, and softly said, Good night, Davina. Then he turned and walked away. Davina stood still, but she knew he felt something too. Days later, Balogan Consulting was born, a strategic investment and analysis firm. Gabriel threw himself into it, building his team, reconnecting with old contacts. Slowly, he began to reclaim his place in the business world. Davina stayed by his side the entire time, never imposing but always present. Until one night, she realized she had to tell him how she felt. I'm in love with you, she said without hesitation. He blinked, caught off guard. Davina, I know it's soon, but I can't pretend anymore. He looked away, his heart pounding. I can't. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. I'm not ready for a relationship. I just got my life back, and I need to focus on that. Davina nodded, though it hurt more than she wanted to admit. All right. He gave her a soft smile. You always understand. But I'm not a woman who gives up easily. In the weeks that followed, Davina made sure he knew she wasn't giving up. Every morning she had a fresh cup of coffee sent to his desk. To keep you going, the note would say. Then came the dinners. Is this a date? He asked one evening. Just dinner between business partners, she replied casually. And then the small surprises. One night, after a long day, Gabriel returned to his office to find a sleek new watch on his desk with a note. I know you like coffee more than gifts, but I hope you'll enjoy this anyway. He chuckled, feeling something stir inside him. But Davina wasn't just trying to win him over, she was supporting him. When an investor tried to deceive him, Davina was the first to warn him. When the media attempted to twist his story, she used her influence to ensure the truth was told. And when Gabriel had a rough day, she showed up with a bottle of scotch and a concerned look. Want to talk about it? He hesitated, but for the first time, allowed himself to open up. Months passed, and Balogan Consulting grew stronger by the day. Gabriel finally felt he had control over his life, but there was something he couldn't deny. Davina was always there. He tried to ignore the feelings that surfaced every time she smiled at him. One evening, Gabriel attended a business event that gathered the biggest names in the market. He moved gracefully through the room, greeting investors and CEOs with the confidence of someone who had faced the worst and survived. His navy blue suit was sophisticated yet understated, still drawing attention. He focused on making meaningful connections, but it didn't take long for him to sense someone watching him. Henrietta Obi, a renowned investor, approached with a charming smile. She was a charismatic woman with dark hair and intense eyes. Mr. Balogan, I finally have the pleasure of meeting you in person. Gabriel returned a polite smile. Miss Obi, the pleasure is mine. She extended her hand, and instead of a formal handshake, she lingered a bit too long. I would say the pleasure is all mine, she said, her gaze holding his. Gabriel was used to such advances, but maintained his composure. I assume you're here for business, he said. Business can wait for a moment, don't you think?
She tilted her head. "May I have this dance?" He hesitated briefly but decided to accept. Dancing meant nothing. Henrietta guided him to the dance floor, holding his arm firmly but respectfully. They moved in sync, and Gabriel realized she was a skilled dancer. "You dance well, Mr. Balogun." "I've learned that a strong presence is essential in business," he replied. "And outside of business?" She smiled, leaning slightly closer. "Aren't there moments when you just let yourself enjoy life?" Gabriel let out a soft laugh. "Are you always this persistent?" "Only when I find something that genuinely interests me." The music ended, but Henrietta didn't immediately let go of his arm. She led him back to the bar, grabbing 2 glasses of champagne and handing one to Gabriel. "So tell me, does a powerful man like you ever make time for fun?" Before Gabriel could answer, he felt the penetrating gaze on him. He turned and saw Davina Adebayo on the other side of the room. Her face was serious, her eyes darkened with something he recognized instantly: jealousy. Davina crossed the room with determined strides, ignoring the greetings she received along the way. When she reached Gabriel and Henrietta, she stopped beside him, her irritation barely concealed. "Gabriel, may I speak with you for a moment?" Her voice was firm but laced with tension. Henrietta raised an eyebrow and offered a polite smile. "Miss Adebayo, correct? I've heard a lot about you." "And I've heard about you," Davina replied coldly. The atmosphere around them seemed to drop a few degrees. "Davina, we're in the middle of a conversation," Gabriel said, trying to maintain composure. "Yes, I noticed," Davina said, shooting a glance at Henrietta. "And as much as I'd love to keep watching this unfold, I have more important matters to discuss with Gabriel." Henrietta maintained a polite demeanor, but Gabriel sensed she had picked up on the tension. "It seems your friend doesn't like sharing attention," Henrietta murmured to him, amused. Before Gabriel could respond, Davina took a step forward, making it clear she didn't appreciate the comment. "You've had your dance, Obi. Now, if you don't mind." Gabriel huffed, grabbing Davina's arm firmly. "Excuse me, Miss Obi. I'll be back in a moment." He pulled Davina toward a more secluded area, his steps firm. When they reached a hallway away from the dance floor, he turned to her, furious. "What was that, Davina?" She ran a hand through her hair, trying to calm her anger. "I couldn't stand seeing that woman hitting on you. And that gives you the right to act like a complete idiot? Did you really not notice the way she was looking at you? She wasn't interested in business, Gabriel. And if she was, that's my business, not yours." Davina was silent for a moment, her eyes glinting with frustration. "You're right," she finally admitted. "But I hate the idea of seeing you with another woman." Gabriel took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. "I'm not yours, Davina. You have no right to be jealous." He turned to leave, but Davina followed him to the parking lot. "Gabriel, wait." He spun around abruptly. "What more do you want?" "I want you to listen to me. I've heard enough. You need to understand that you can't control me." The tension between them was explosive. Davina stared at him fiercely, and Gabriel felt his body buzzing with adrenaline. Then, suddenly, she pulled him toward her and kissed him. It was a desperate kiss, filled with anger and suppressed desire. Gabriel froze for a second, but then, unable to resist, he kissed her back. But then reality hit him, and he pushed her away. "You can't do that." Davina was breathing heavily, her eyes darkened with desire. "I know you felt it. That doesn't justify anything." He turned and got into his car. Before she could say another word, he sped out of the parking lot, leaving Davina behind. The next day, Gabriel was in his office, but his mind was still on what had happened. He tried to focus on his reports, but the memory of the kiss haunted him. Then, the door opened, and Davina walked in. "You can't just show up unannounced," he said without looking up. "I came to apologize." He finally looked at her. "For the jealousy or for the kiss you stole?" She sighed. "Both." "Good. Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." Davina chose not to insist and walked away. He turned back to his documents. "Let's play a little game with those who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand." Now let's continue with the story. That night, Gabriel left the office late. As he approached his car, he noticed something was wrong. The window had been scratched, a word crudely etched onto the glass. Beware. His blood ran cold. Someone was trying to scare him. His first instinct was to call Davina, but he hesitated. He didn't want to give her another reason to act like his protector. But before he could decide, a message appeared on his phone. Alone, you won't get anywhere. Know when to quit. This time, he didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone and dialed Davina. She answered on the second ring. What happened? Someone scratched my car, and I just got a threat. Her silence lasted only a second before her voice came out firm. I'm on my way. 15 minutes later, Davina pulled up next to his car. She studied the scratches on the window, her expression hard. Are you okay? Yes, he said, crossing his arms. You know you can't ignore this, right? I know. Davina pulled out her phone and called one of her private security contacts. I need footage from the cameras in this area. Find out who did this, now. Gabriel watched as she took control of the situation, handling the problem with the ease of someone who had dealt with threats before. As much as he didn't want to rely on anyone, in that moment, he felt an odd sense of relief that she was there. When Davina hung up, she turned to him. Until we find out who's behind this, I want you to have extra security. Davina, never. The following days were filled with tension. Davina managed to find out that the attacks on Gabriel's company were being orchestrated by one of Samuel's former associates, who was trying to block his rise. When Gabriel found out, he didn't hesitate. He scheduled a meeting with the man and, alongside Davina, made it clear that he wouldn't be intimidated. Did you think you'd scare me? He said, keeping his voice calm. Let me be clear. I've lost everything before, but now there's nothing that will make me back down. The man swallowed hard. He knew he had lost. After that confrontation, the attacks stopped. Gabriel proved he was not an easy opponent. But his victory had an unexpected side effect. He realized that throughout this entire time, Davina had been by his side, not to protect him from something he couldn't handle, but to support him. And that made him question why he was still trying to keep his distance. One evening, Gabriel was in his office, lost in thought, when Davina walked in. It's been 3 months since you opened the company, she said, tossing a small box onto the desk. He picked it up and opened it. Inside was a silver keychain with the letter G engraved on it. To celebrate, she said. He smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Thank you. She watched him for a moment before speaking. Will you ever stop running from me? He held his breath. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to know if there's a chance. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew the answer but couldn't say it yet. She noticed. It's okay, she said, stepping back. Like I said, I'm patient. When she left the room, Gabriel let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He knew he was close to giving in, but when he finally made that decision, it would be for good. And that scared him more than any threat he'd ever faced. The next day started like any other. Gabriel arrived early at the office, immersed in reports and meetings. Since the attacks on his company had ceased, he was finally able to focus on growing the business. But throughout the morning, something began to bother him. Davina didn't show up. That was unusual. Davina always found a way to drop by, even if just for a few minutes, with some work excuse or simply to tease him. But that morning, she didn't call, didn't send any messages, and didn't show up. At first, Gabriel tried to ignore it, but as the hours passed, the unease grew inside him. By 8 o'clock in the evening, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his coat and left the office, driving to Davina's penthouse. When he arrived, he rang the doorbell several times. No answer. His heart raced. He took out the spare key Davina had given him for emergencies and unlocked the door. The lights in the apartment were dim. The place was silent except for the low hum of the television. That's when he saw her. Davina was lying on the couch, covered with a thin blanket, her face pale and her breathing heavy. Davina,
Gabriel ran to her, placing his hand on her forehead. She was burning up. She opened her eyes slowly, surprised to see him there.
Gabriel? Oh my God, you have a fever. He held her face, worried. It's just the flu, she murmured, her voice hoarse. I'm taking you to the hospital, Gabriel said, already grabbing his phone. But Davina held his wrist, stopping him. No, I just need to rest. Davina, you're burning up. She tried to smile.
If I go to the hospital, they'll take my blood. I hate needles. Gabriel sighed in frustration. You're impossible. Davina closed her eyes, exhausted. Gabriel got up and went to the kitchen, preparing hot tea and grabbing a damp cloth. He returned to the living room, kneeling by the sofa and placing the cloth on her forehead. This will help bring down your fever. She opened her eyes, looking at him softly. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. The silence between them was heavy with meaning. Gabriel didn't want to admit it, but seeing her like that tightened his chest. He spent the entire night taking care of her. He made tea, changed the cold cloth on her forehead, and stayed by her side. At some point during the night, exhaustion took over. He fell asleep there, sitting on the floor with his head resting near her chest. The next morning, Gabriel woke up to the gentle touch of Davina's fingers in his hair. Did you stay here all night? She asked, her voice stronger. He blinked a few times before lifting his head. You were in bad shape. Someone had to take care of you. She smiled, running a hand over his face. I feel much better. I think I had the best nurse in the world. He chuckled softly and stood up. I'll make breakfast. Gabriel went to the kitchen and carefully prepared everything. Fresh bread, neatly sliced fruit, orange juice, and strong coffee. When he returned with the tray, he found Davina sitting on the couch, watching him with a different expression. What is it? He asked. She took a deep breath before speaking. I love you, Gabriel. He froze for a second. Davina, I know you feel the same. I saw it last night, and the way you were worried about me. He bit his lip, his heart pounding. This time there was no reason to deny it. I love you too, Davina. Her eyes lit up with happiness. Finally, she murmured, pulling him into a tight embrace. He laughed against her chest, feeling ridiculously happy. You're so persistent, and it was worth it. They pulled apart, and Gabriel served breakfast. Davina watched his every move as if memorizing everything. I want you to take the day off, she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. What? I want to take you somewhere special. He hesitated, but after the night before, he didn't want to be away from her. All right, where are we going? It's a surprise. Davina took him to a secluded cabin on a private beach. As soon as they stepped out of the car, Gabriel was speechless. Davina, this is beautiful, she smiled. I knew you'd love it. They spent the afternoon walking along the shore, feeling the ocean breeze and talking about everything. Then Gabriel sat on a rock and looked at her thoughtfully. What is it? She asked, sitting beside him. He took a deep breath before speaking. Before I met you, I was lost, angry at the world. I only cared about survival and revenge. Davina stayed quiet, listening intently. But then you came along and started challenging me. At first I found it irritating, but then I became intrigued. He looked at her. You were the first person who wasn't afraid to stand up to me. And that made me realize I was surrounded by people who just looked down on me. You made me see the world differently. Her heart tightened. I never wanted to change you, Gabriel. But you did. You made me a better man, more hopeful, more open. Gabriel smiled softly. And I fell in love with this version of you. He took her hand, his eyes locked onto hers. I need to ask you something. She frowned, slightly confused. What? Gabriel stood up and pulled something from his pocket. Davina's eyes widened when she saw a small box. He opened it, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. Davina Adebayo, I want to do this the right way. I want to love you the way you deserve, with respect, with patience, and with all my heart. Tears filled her eyes. Will you marry me? She didn't have to think twice. Yes. Gabriel smiled and slipped the ring onto her finger, before pulling her into a passionate kiss. At that moment, Davina knew there were no more barriers between them, and that this was only the beginning of something even greater. The sun was setting over the beach as Gabriel and Davina returned to the cabin. The air was still warm, and the scent of the ocean mixed with the gentle breeze that made her hair dance. Gabriel held Davina's hand firmly, as if afraid she might disappear, but there were no more doubts. They belonged to each other. I still can't believe we're engaged, Davina said, looking at the ring sparkling on her finger. Gabriel smiled, pulling her closer. I knew this would happen. You just took your time accepting it. She rolled her eyes, laughing. You never give up, do you? Never. Not when it comes to you. Her heart warmed at his words. She had never imagined finding a love this deep, this real. Later that night, Gabriel prepared a special dinner for them on the cabin's terrace. Candles lit the table, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore created the perfect atmosphere. You're cooking? Davina teased, looking at the perfectly plated dish. I wanted to impress my fiancé, Gabriel replied, pouring wine for both of them. She picked up her glass and raised a toast. To us. To our future. Gabriel clinked his glass against hers. To the love of my life. They toasted and enjoyed dinner, sharing laughter and loving glances. When they finished, Gabriel took Davina's hand and pulled her in for a dance under the stars. Do you remember the first time we danced? He asked, guiding her slowly. At that business event? I remember. You were insanely jealous. He chuckled. I was. But now I know I never had to be. You were always meant to be mine. Davina smiled and rested her head on his chest. There, dancing under the starry sky, she realized she would never have to run from her feelings again. Months later, the big day finally arrived. Gabriel had never imagined he would dream of a wedding, but there he was, dressed in a sleek tuxedo, about to say, I do, to the woman who had changed his life. The ceremony took place in a beautiful garden by the sea. White flowers decorated the altar, and elegant chairs were neatly arranged for the guests. The sound of the ocean in the background created a magical atmosphere. Gabriel stood at the altar, his heart pounding. When Davina appeared at the aisle, his breath caught in his throat. She was stunning. Her hair fell in soft waves, and the delicate white lace dress highlighted her beauty in an ethereal way. But what captivated him the most was the sparkle in her eyes. Davina walked toward him with an emotional smile. When she reached the altar, Gabriel held her hands and whispered, You look beautiful. She smiled, feeling tears welling in her eyes. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking about love, partnership, and the meaning of building a life together. When it was time for the vows, Gabriel took a deep breath before starting. Davina, from the moment I first saw you, you challenged me. You never looked down on me, never treated me like I was invisible. And that's what made me fall in love with you. Davina's eyes filled with tears. You taught me to trust again. You made me see that power and money mean nothing if I don't have someone by my side to share life with. I promise to love, respect, and make you happy every day of my life. Davina could barely contain her emotion as she began her vows. Gabriel, I spent my life fighting alone, thinking I could never trust anyone with my heart. But you were persistent. You never gave up on me, and today I know I never want to live without you. They exchanged rings, and when the officiant declared them husband and wife, Gabriel pulled her into a passionate kiss as the guests applauded. It was official. They were husband and wife. The honeymoon was perfect. They traveled to beautiful destinations, enjoyed every second together, and when they returned, their life as a married couple started even better than they had imagined. Gabriel insisted on spoiling her, bringing coffee to bed every morning, while Davina returned the favor by planning romantic weekend getaways. Their love only grew stronger. But something began to change in Davina. She felt strange, constantly tired and nauseous. One morning, while in the bathroom, her heart raced as she looked at the pregnancy test in her hands. 2 lines. She was pregnant. Emotion overwhelmed her and tears streamed down her face. She and Gabriel were going to have a baby. But when she went to the doctor for confirmation, the surprise was even bigger. She was expecting twins. When she got home, Gabriel found her sitting on the couch holding the ultrasound. "Davina, what's wrong?" He looked at her, his eyes shining with concern. "Gabriel, I'm pregnant." He froze for a second. "What?" She smiled, taking his hands and placing the ultrasound in his palm. "We're having twins." Gabriel's eyes widened before a huge smile spread across his face. "Oh my God," he laughed, pulling her into a strong hug. "We're having 2 babies." "Yes." He held her face in his hands and kissed her deeply. "You just gave me the best news of my life." She laughed through her tears. "I love you so much, Gabriel. And I love you more." The following months were an emotional roller coaster. Gabriel became even more protective, spoiling Davina constantly. He talked to the babies before bedtime, gave them foot massages, and insisted she didn't overdo it at the office. Finally, at the baby shower, surrounded by friends and family, they revealed they were expecting a boy and a girl. Gabriel held Davina and whispered, "We built a life together. Now we'll build a family." She smiled, her heart overflowing with happiness, "And it'll be the best one ever." At that moment, Davina knew she had everything she'd ever dreamed of: a home, true love, and now a growing family. And she would never be alone again. What did you think of Davina and Gabriel's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments.